And now it's time for Power of Prophecy with your host, former professor at the University of Texas at Austin, career United States Air Force officer, and best-selling author, Texe MARRS.
Hello, friends. This is Texe MARRS, and welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. Well, today we got a lot to talk about, a lot of interesting things. You know, this is the most fascinating time that any person could ever live. Well, I suppose if you were back in the days of Jesus, boy, that was pretty exciting too, wasn't it? Man, that was exciting. But this maybe will take second place, perhaps. You know, here's some things I want to discuss today from our newest volume, volume 236 of Secrets. You know, when we do Secrets, we discuss things that, well, the mainstream press just doesn't. A lot of people don't even know that they exist, don't know that these things, you know, are out there because the mainstream media don't dare report them. You know, I feel so sorry for the mainstream media. One of the Obama administration policymakers recently came out. He just said flat out that, you know, it's easy to put one over today's journalists. He says, basically said they're all 27-year-old fools. And they are. They all come from the same, you know, journalism schools, broadcasting schools, and they're all liberals. It's now, of course, you don't call a liberal. A liberal is he's or she is a progressive. They're progressing. I don't see any line of progression whatsoever, but anyway, that's what they call themselves. Now, recently, Trump has been just flabbergasted all of these idiots. They really are. I know it sounds so harsh of me. A lot of people write to me as a text, why do you use such words? You know, you're just like Trump. You're just a bully. Hey, listen, Trump's been nice for many years. I've been saying these for since I was about 30 years of age. So I've got 40 years going here. I mean, you don't want me to change after some 40 years as an adult, do you? Anyway, I wouldn't change anyway. I tell the truth. You know, Teddy Roosevelt was an interesting man. He won the presidency, and Teddy Roosevelt said, I'm going to break up the big trust. Now, what were trust? That was the conglomerates, the corporations all getting together. You know, all the steel workers get together and all of the, you know, everybody get together in every industry, the oil companies, the chemical makers, and so forth. And when you all combine together into a conglomerate, into a trust, as he called them, trust, well, what's the working man to do? You know, if you complain against a company and they lay you off, they're going to blackball you among all the other companies. You know, they've got your number. So, you know, you're not going to get work anywhere. That's what they would do to men and the few women who complained about them. And then, of course, they would set prices artificially high. And basically, they were running roughshod over the American working class, the middle class, as we call them. He said, make me president, I'm going to break up these trusts. Well, you know, in a sense, that's what Trump is doing. He said, I'm going to break up these trusts, these Wall Street conglomerates. You know, because they set up the rules for trading. These trading so-called treaties are not even treaties. They've never been voted on as a treaty. NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific, you know, Act and all that, which makes them unconstitutional in the first place. But he says we're going to break them up. These are trading deals between these rip-off conglomerates. I'm going to break them up. Well, Teddy Roosevelt talked about breaking up the trust, and he was asked one time, do you really have the authority as president to break up these gigantic trusts? You know what he said, friends? He said, I have the authority in the fact that the presidency is now listen to this, is a bully pulpit. He was like the minister of America, you see. The presidency whoever held that position had the right to be a bully. And he would use the White House, that authority, as his pulpit. Oh, don't ever go against the bully. When the bully's in that pulpit in the White House, he can go a long, long way. He sets the tone for things, doesn't he? Now, Obama could have set the tone for America toward great race relations. I mean, the first black president, well, it's half black, but, the first black president. What an opportunity we had as a country. I mean, the blacks are only about 14% of the American people. That's all, 14%. But we had put into office a black man. But instead, Obama turned the blacks against the whites. And now we have Black Lives Matters, and to hell with white lives. Isn't that true, friends? Now, see, I was a bully again, wasn't I? But I'm going to say it one more time. Today we have Black Lives Matter, which pleases Obama and all his communist associates. But white lives can just go to blazes, right? That's true. It is true. Well, Teddy Roosevelt used the White House as a bully pulpit. This is the whole thing in America. Even the Supreme Court can be used for a bully pulpit. I mean, what if the President of the United States, what if the 50 governors of the states decided to tell the Supreme Court after they had made a decision to go fly a kite? What would the Supreme Court do? Why, they may declare that the president can't do that. Oh, really? Yeah, they would say, well, we hereby rule that the presidency saying that we can't make this ruling is going directly against our authority, and therefore the president should be arrested. Oh, really? They can't do that. First of all, the Constitution says if the president violates his oath of office, which that would obviously be a violation, he doesn't get arrested. He doesn't have the Army or the Navy or somebody go against him. He gets impeached. And the impeachment simply means a trial. You have to be convicted. Well, that could take a couple of years. And so the president could just do whatever he wants. The Supreme Court could make his decision and say, Americans have to go along with same-sex marriage. And the president can say, bully you, I'm not going along with it, and I recommend that nobody in America do it. You Supreme Court justices, now, go do what you want to do about it. Come on. As one of the early presidents said, when the Supreme Court made a decision that went against what the president said, the president said this, he said, the Supreme Court has made a decision. Now let them try to enforce it. Uh-oh. It's sort of like Joseph Stalin at the beginning of World War II. He did some things that the Vatican didn't like. And one of his advisors said, Comrade Stalin, the Vatican is really opposed to what you did here. Stalin looked at him and said, really? The associate said, yes, the Vatican is opposed to your plan. And he leaned back in his chair and he said, now, how many army divisions does the Vatican have exactly? Think that. Stalin leaned back in his chair and smiled and said, how many army divisions does the Vatican have exactly? Well, doesn't have one. It's got these fancy guards. What do they call the Swiss guards? They're not even Italian. They're not even. They dress these funny uniforms that date back to 1400, 1300. And they curtsy real nice and, they look like a bunch of buffoons. But they have no authority, no military power. And the Supreme Court's the same way. Let them make their ruling. See if they can enforce it. What are they going to do? Send the U.S. troops down to force us to do it? Well, the U.S. troops, who do they work for? The president. He's the commander-in-chief. He could have all of the court justices all removed from office. You say, well, he wouldn't do that. That would mean, what would it mean? In any case, the bully pulpit can be very powerful if you use it correctly. And Trump, the fact that he's got a bully pulpit frightens people, completely frightens them. I'd like to talk about that a little bit today. I also like to talk about Rafael Cruz. He's the father of Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, who ran for president, just dropped out because he got beat in so many primaries by Trump. Was his father, Rafael Cruz, a CIA pal and associate of Lee Harvey Oswald? Now, Trump brought this out, but I had seen it on the web and I had checked it out myself, and I legitimately believe that Rafael Cruz from Cuba was indeed a CIA associate. It definitely is him in this photo handing out these flyers that a CIA had printed up called the Hands Off Cuba, I think they were called. Hands Off Cuba. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald, of course, went on and was accused a short while later of murdering President John F. Kennedy. If that was true, and if Cruz was part of the network, maybe Cruz helped to kill President Kennedy. And maybe that's why his son, Ted, has been so favored. Well, we'll get into that in just a minute. By the way, did Rafael Cruz, the father of Ted Cruz, did he work for George Herbert Walker Bush for the CIA? Was he part of that network? Hey, George Patton, General George Patton. You know, a lot of people seem to like George. Now, George, well, the question is, was he murdered? Now, O'Reilly, Bill O'Reilly of Fox News, the O'Reilly Factor, is writing these books that, I mean, they're specially designed. He doesn't write them himself, of course. They're ghost-written books, but they're all big bestsellers, and every one of them come out and they're about killing Kennedy and killing Patton and so forth. These are books written by Bill O'Reilly. Now, the book, Killing George Patton, he says that George Patton, who died supposedly in a truck and automobile accident in his last days, right after World War II in Germany, he says that George Patton was murdered, perhaps. He says the Soviet Union did it. The communists did it. That's pretty far-fetched. I believe I know who killed George Patton. And, well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Hey, Glenn Beck. You know, I've warned you about Glenn Beck before. He's a big con artist. He's a Freemason, as are many of the higher-ups in the Masonic Lodge. They're all Mormons. And Glenn Beck is definitely a Freemason. And Beck, by the way, is a strange sort of guy. He believes in the Mother Goddess, as do the top-ranking Mormons. We have a Father God, but we also have a Mother God, a Mother Goddess in heaven. And the Father God is constantly having sex with the Mother Goddess. Now, I've heard of that doctrine before. It seems that comes right out of Judaism. Did you know the Jews believe that? A lot of people don't realize that, but the Jews do believe that. The Jews believe we have a mother in heaven. She's called the Shekinah glory. And she also has names like Malkut. Well, I've never heard of such a thing, you say. I've never heard of Malkut. I've never heard of the Shekinah. Oh, yeah. She's a real presence. And many of the Jews pray to the goddess. Now, people think that they pray to the Old Testament God, Jehovah. No. No. You know, we're not offering the book anymore. I wish we still were. A book by Dr. Israel Shahak. Dr. Shahak taught at Hebrew University. Great man, a citizen of Israel, a great scholar. But he had several books about the Jewish religion. And he even though he was a Jew and he fought in the Israeli army and so forth, he knew that Judaism was a big fake religion. It was a huge cult and still is today. And he talked in one of his books, 2,000 Years of the Jewish Religion, which we offered here in the ministry. Dr. Shahak talked about how fakey it was and how very, very anti-Christian the Jewish religion was, and how stupid it was, and how many Jews in Judaism would not pray to the God of the Old Testament. They didn't even believe there was a God of the Old Testament. They believed they should pray to Satan. They prayed to Lucifer. Others pray to the Shekinah, to the great mother goddess. While still others pray to various deities in Judaism. In fact, in Judaism, in the Kabbalah, there's over 10 gods and goddesses. And the real God is named Ein Sof. And you can't reach him. He won't communicate with you. He's not interested in listening to you or hearing of your complaints. He's created a great goddess. She's a spark of light from him, of Ein Sof. And Lucifer is a spark of light. And the great serpent, Leviathan. Read about him in the book of Job. He also is a spark of divine light. You can pray to the serpent. And many Jews do. They pray to the serpent. Now, friends, when I have a need, I get on my knees or I sit quietly and close my eyes and I meditate and pray to God. I can pray to Jesus Christ because the Father and the Son are one. And you know, God will always hear me. Now, that's the wonderful thing about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ told his disciples, he's not only God, but he's their friend. Did you know that you had a friend in heaven? Now, if you're a Catholic, a lot of Catholics, they're too afraid to pray to Jesus. They pray to Mary, they pray to the saints, or whatever. The Jews are the same way. They pray to the Shekinah glory, the mother goddess, or they even pray to Lucifer. Oh my. That Judaism, that's a laughable religion, isn't it? A lot of people say, oh, well, you should warn people. If they believe in praying to Leviathan the serpent or to the mother goddess or the Jews believe in praying to Lucifer, you should warn people against Judaism. You know, friends, when I think about it, I think about laughing. I mean, if you knew that Judaism believes in these things and does these things, wouldn't you laugh? I mean, think about it. I mean, let's just say you went on a planet somewhere and you landed and two guys came to see you, and one was named, let's say, Klein or Cohen, and one was named Smith or Wilson. Now, Smith and Wilson believed in God. And you asked them about this God, and they told you, and they pray to God. And then you asked a Jew, who do you pray to? Who is your supreme being? And they said, well, we have many. We have Ein Sof, but of course he doesn't like to listen to us. So we have the serpent. We pray to him sometime, but he doesn't always listen to us either. So we pray to the mother goddess as Malkut. And then we also have a Hasod. That's the, believe it or not, but it's the male phallus, the male penis god. That's one of the Judaic gods too. Yeah, they do. That's one of the Judaic gods. You'd say, wait just a minute. You mean you got a penis god? The Jew would say, oh, yes. And then you've got a serpent god named Leviathan you pray to? Yes. And you've got some mother goddess and you pray to her? Yes. You'd say, I think you're nuts. You're wacko. And you'd be right. And Jews, they really don't know how they got here. They don't believe in the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible. I remember I was at a conference in California some years ago, and I spoke about the Jews' beliefs. And boy, this Jew came up to me right after I spoke, and he was so mad. And he put his finger right in my face. And he said, how dare you to speak about the Jewish religion? I've never heard a Christian say such things. I said, well, where did I go wrong? Did I lie about it? Well, you just can't say those things. Well, tell me where I went wrong. I'll be glad to change my beliefs. I just want to know what your religion teaches. I mean, what I said was true. I even quote your rabbis, the greatest rabbis. And he said, there's no rabbi that teaches those things. So I said, well, wait just a minute now. We have this rabbi and that rabbi and this rabbi and that rabbi. Pretty soon the guy, his face was turning totally red. And we had gathered sort of a crowd up there, and I was quoting all these rabbis, and he was saying, oh, no, we don't believe that. Well, you don't believe your own rabbi then. Then I'd quote another rabbi. Well. Finally, I said, well, now, where did the Jews come from? Did God made them chosen? So where did they come from? Well, he said, You want to know where the Jews came from? I said, well, yeah. Of course, friend, I believe in the book of Genesis. And that was before the Jews even existed. I believe in Adam and Eve. And, of course, they had two sons, Cain and Abel. And so it's very simple what Christians know is true. But I wanted to know from this Jewish man. There he was putting his finger in my face, telling me I was a liar about the Jewish religion. So I said, I want to know where the Jews come from. You say you're God's chosen people. You say I don't know anything about Judaism, even though I've quoted all these rabbis to you. So why don't you just tell me? I'd really like to know from you. He said, well, okay. You see, he said, on one day, millions of years ago, extraterrestrial aliens, spacemen, came from outer space, and they landed on an island in the Pacific. I said, go ahead. That sounds interesting. And they planted the seeds that became the Jews on that island in the Pacific. I said, so the Jews came from space aliens who planted them as seeds. Now, these seeds then grew. I said, yes, they grew, and they were blessed by God, and they became his chosen. So you came from the spaceships. Yes, that's right. We're space people. I said, that really makes you really special, doesn't it? He said, yes. Now think about that, friends. This guy was telling me I didn't know anything about Judaism. He didn't know anything himself. The fact is, I had studied it for years. I have studied it. This guy really believed that space aliens created the Jews. But he went on to tell me in very awed tone, he said, that's why the Jews are so special. We're the only ones that the extraterrestrials have seeded on this planet. I said, that really does make you special, doesn't it? Folks, you ask the Jews sometime. If they want to tell you the truth, this guy he really wanted me to know where the Jews came from. Well, they came, these spaceships, I don't know, from outer space, planted the seeds. Oh boy. They're absolutely nuts, aren't they? We've got to laugh at that, folks. You can't get mad at folks like that. You can't get mad at idiots who believe they're chosen because spacemen planted them. Well, Glenn Beck, he's a big promoter of Ted Cruz. He said he spent over $500,000. $500,000 to promote him. It seems like Glenn Beck made a big mistake, though. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Hey, have you heard about this deadly Zika virus? Now, several hundred people have got this in the United States. Think about that. This virus. It's very deadly, and you can contract this disease by transmission of these mosquitoes. Now, you've heard of the same mosquitoes that, give people malaria and those other diseases that we thought were pretty well stamped out. Well, now this new virus called Zika virus is back. People are really worried about it. It seems that it's ravaging down in South America, just ravaging in Brazil, where we're supposed to hold the Summer Olympics this very year. I mean, they've spent over $1 billion, who knows how many hundreds of millions to prepare for the Olympics. Brazil. But suddenly they've got this infestation of these Aedes aegypti. That's the name of the mosquitoes. It's the breed called Aedes aegypti. It's the same ones that have spread malaria and so forth. But now they've got a new disease they're spreading around. Now, how did this disease get in these mosquitoes so they could pass it on to human beings? It seems like you can get it through sex. You can have sex with an infected person and contract this Zika virus. Now, from what I've read, let me just, I was reading an article in Atlantic magazine entitled Genetically Modified Mosquitoes. What could possibly go wrong? Genetically modified mosquitoes. What could possibly go wrong? It seems that our government laboratories were working on a mosquito. Now, they said that they were working on this mosquito to try to stamp out or exterminate mosquitoes. Boy, I'd like them to do that, wouldn't you? One mosquito just makes me sort of sick. When I get bitten by a mosquito and it starts itching, and wow, I get a big whelp on my arm. A lot of people are very allergic to there's something like a liquid that mosquitoes, when they bite you, right before they bite you, they excrete this little liquid. And the liquid helps them to digest your blood. That's what they're, blood suckers, right? Now, they decided that they would spread this, I don't know, this genetically modified mosquito around. And before long, maybe it would kill off a lot of the mosquitoes. In other words, they would start to be programmed to die off early. And so the government started letting these genetically modified mosquitoes out. Well, it turned out that they may have killed a few of the Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, but they created this Zika virus. That was what the government created. That's what could possibly go wrong. You see, when our government scientists start messing with nature, I mean, they become killers, don't they? I don't have any doubt at all that this horrible disease, what do they call that? Jerry's here in the studio. Excuse me, I guess my mind's just gone blank, but the disease that was going around, still around evidently. No, well, AIDS. AIDS was definitely created in the laboratory by government scientists. But there was also, the fever that was in Africa and is still there in several countries. It spread to America with a nurse that was in Africa and a doctor and so forth. And I forget the name of that virus, but it's still going around. And not too many people have died from it. But they have all kind of stuff like that, Lassa fever and others. And it's sort of interesting that all of these seem to have been given or contracted from these doctors. And I believe they go over to Africa and start giving people there just to see what will happen and all. And that's the trouble. Genetically modified mosquitoes, the Aedes aegypti. Now we have the Zika virus. We need to close these laboratories down. We do. They're killing people. Well, oh yes, Gog and Magog. I got to talk about that today. We've got another 30 minutes on the program. I got to tell you about Gog and Magog. The Bible talks about it. It's in the book of Revelation. That's the final battle. It talks about the forces of Gog from Magog comes up out of the pit of hell. And soon they encompass the whole world. I mean, that's the beast that rises up out of the earth. And then he has all these nations that he controls, and soon he makes war against the saints. That's Revelation 13. And he encompasses the camp of the saints. Where's the camp of the saints? That's wherever the saints are. That means he's going to make war against you and me as the saints. Gog from Magog. And evidently, there's Jewish rabbis today that claim that this new temple of Baal, you heard about it, didn't you? They're going to build a temple of Baal in London, a temple of Baal in New York. It'll be to the exact prescriptions. I mean, they've done it digitally and reproduced these horrible temples of Baal. Baal was the great demon god, the devil. And they sacrificed their children. Read about it in the book of Amos. They sacrificed their children. The Jews sacrificed their own children. And now they're building this temple of Baal. And many of the Jewish rabbis say, well, now it's time for Gog and Magog to come forth. Now it's time for the Jewish Messiah to come forth. Do you know who the Jewish Messiah is going to be? Not Jesus. He's already come. Oh, he'll come again, but he's not going to come as a Jewish Messiah. He's going to come as the king of the universe. I'm telling you, this is the Antichrist, folks. We'll talk more about the temple of Baal and about the Jewish Antichrist and how the Jews think they can make him come. They can order him to come. Well, God has to do whatever the rabbis say. We'll be right back after this brief message. Stay with us, won't you? I'm Texe MARRS. You're listening to Power of Prophecy. Hello, friends. Again, this is Texe MARRS. Have you ever read the book, and what a book it is, The Protocols of Zion? The formal title is The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, 33rd Degree. Well, that tells you where they come from. They're all Freemasons. Most Masonic temples and lodges in the United States and around the world have a symbol. In fact, they have a number of symbols. One of the symbols that they all seem to love is that Masonic symbol of the square and the compass. But look very close at the square and the compass, and when you fill out the lines, it becomes a Jewish six-pointed star. And many of the temples and the lodges of the Masons just go ahead and complete it on the front, the very outside. They put it right on the door, right on the wall of the building. A Jewish six-pointed star. Now count it. It's got a hexagram inside the star. That's 6 sides, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's got 6 points on the star. That's 6. And it's made up of, basically 6 triangles. And what that means is the Jewish Star of David is symbolically 666. It is the mark of the beast. Now, the Jews don't want you to know about that. They say that's the Star of David, but David never used that star. Go back and read in the Bible. Read what David himself said. His shield was the Lord God. He didn't need any symbol. That's my shield. I see some of these old movies and the old books by the Jews, and they show David wearing, this toga or whatever, sort of looks like a Roman. It's got a great big old Star of David on it. Why, he didn't know anything about that. He did know that it was the same star that the Canaanites used. It was the same star that they used, the same people who built the temple of Baal, meaning the temple of Satan. No, David wouldn't have been caught dead using or wearing the 6-pointed star. In fact, it was Rothschild back in the late 1700s that adopted the star. You can read the history of it in my book, Conspiracy of the 6-Pointed Star. But listen, I want you to know about the protocols of Zion. Everything that's happening today, our immigration problem with all the migrant invasion and so forth, all that's, you'll find that in the book Protocols of Zion. It really means the future plans of the Jews. Yeah. You'll also find their idea for a Jewish king of the whole world. And their plot to take over the media of the world. And all of the banks and the commercial operations of the world. That's Revelation 18. Mystery, Babylon the Great. A lot of folks ask me, Texe, what is Mystery Babylon the Great? Why, that would be the Jewish Empire. Oh, the Jews don't have an empire. There's only maybe 8 million Jews in all of Israel. There's 15 or 16 million Jews in the whole world. Experts disagree, but they're all within a few million. That's all. Hey, we have more Texans in Texas than there are Jews in the whole world. I like that. Think about that. We have more Texans. If you're from California, of course, you got about 50% more Californians than you have Jews in the whole world. How could they have an empire? Because the Bible says so. In the book of Daniel, it says the Antichrist will come to power in the last days with a small people. He won't have a grand empire with all these people. He uses others. Wall Street has an idiom. They say it's better to use other people's money. You don't want to use your own money. Use other people's money. They even have an acronym. They call it OPM, other people's money. They want you to deposit your savings in a bank. Then they'll take all the composite savings and they'll use it to go out and, spend billions of dollars on land projects and speculation and so forth. OPM, other people's money. Read about Protocols of Zion. Now, I want to tell you, you can get this book from us. We publish it. It was written along around 1900. But it's just as good today. It's just as descriptive. It's just as authentic today as it was back when it first came out. Sergius Nilus, the Russian Orthodox monk, he was a monk. He found this book and he published it in a bigger book. And then about 12 years later, the communists took over the Soviet Union. You know one of the first people they went looking for? When Lenin and Trotsky and all the other communist butchers took over the Russian government in Moscow, and they began to kill all the Gentiles, all the Christians, they went to look for Mr. Sergei, they say it in Russian, Nelius. Sergei Nelius. They found him. They put him on trial. They said, you've done great damage by publishing the Protocols of Zion. He was given a 10-year prison sentence. He was an old man. All he had done was publish this book that they knew to be true. Well, it's still true. The book was secreted out of Russia. It was published by a British editor named Victor Marsden, and we've got it today. And by the way, when my publishing company, Texe MARRS Publishing Company, discovered that this book had been banned and censored, and you couldn't buy it at any bookstore in America or the whole world, I just decided, well, I'm going to publish it. People said, Texe, you're out of your mind. If you publish that book, they're going to come at you. They're going to look what they did to Nelius. He died a wrecked man. He died, after 10 years of hard time in a horrible prison in Russia. And that's all he had done, just published a book. Didn't they have free press there? Well, no. Didn't they have free speech there? Well, no. And, people have said to me, aren't you afraid? Aren't you afraid they're going to come and get you for publishing that book? In fact, friends, I'm not afraid. And in fact, I even wrote the foreword for it. You'll get my foreword. You'll even get a foreword by Henry Ford, the great industrialist. He was brave enough to publish that book. And then I published it. It's time we quit being, we quit being cowards. We've got God on our side, friends. God tells us what to do. They can't control me or you. Oh, they may even put me in prison someday for publishing this book. I want you to have this book. What is it, $20? I think that's all it is, just $20. You'll have the book of the century. They've banned this everywhere for over 100 years. And you'll find out that it's as effective and as powerful today as it ever was. We'll send it to you, of course, in a regular envelope. They won't even see that you're ordering the book. It'll just be an envelope. We'll send the book right out to you. The Protocols of Zion. I just praise God. We have people in this ministry and follow this ministry that are brave, that know that God is more powerful than Satan and his Judaic forces. Please order the book. $20, add $5 shipping and handling. A total of $25. Just say, Texe, send me the book, Protocols of Zion. I'll send it right out to you. You can phone us toll free, 1-800-234-9673. Now you can go to our website, powerofprophecy.com or texmarrs.com. Or you can write to us at Power of Prophecy, 1708 Patterson Road, Austin, Texas, 78733. By the way, I was reading something wonderful in God's Word today in the King James Bible. Jesus was asked about the dead. Did you know that? He was once asked about the dead. But what he said must have really astonished the Jews of that day. He said, God is not God of the dead, but God of the living. Now, think about that. See, we think that, the dead have gone on to be with Christ and that heaven is made up of these dead people. Oh, my goodness, you have to think about that. Jesus said that our God is not a God of the dead. He's a God of the living. Would you like to live forever, friends? You can. And God will be your God forever. God is not a God of the dead. You know, they have an Egyptian book of the dead. In fact, in the Masonic Lodge, it's one of the most treasured of books. Yeah, Albert Pike wrote about it and said, this is a great book, the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The Tibetan Buddhist sect also have that book, or one similar to it. And it's the Egyptian Book of the Dead. If you're a Mason, they'll give you a funeral when you die. And they use some of the wording in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Oh my. But as Christians, we will never die. God is not God of the dead, but of the living. Wow. Okay, let's return to our regular program now. Hey, by the way, Jerry Barrett's with us here, and he's our radio man. Hey, I like that title. Radio man. That sort of sounds interesting, doesn't it? You're the radio man. Yeah, okay. Well, radio man, Jerry, I want to tell the folks here what you reminded me during the break. I was asking you what was that virus, the sickness that the government evidently engineered is now in Africa and came to America, and you told me, well, that's Ebola virus. Ebola. Okay, that's the name of it. They change the names and all, and they need to get out of genetically modifying these viruses that'll kill you. I want to talk to you about Gog and Magog. Now, the Jews are telling us that we're on the very verge of Gog and Magog. And the temple of Baal has been built by two universities. One is Oxford University in England, and the other is Harvard here in the United States. Now, why would Harvard and Oxford University be interested in rebuilding a replica of the Temple of Baal? Well, the Jews believe that when the third version of this is built, that's when their Messiah will come. They're looking for their Messiah. Now, the Orthodox Jews recently had a big convention, and there were thousands of rabbis there, okay, in New York City. This was only about 3 months ago. And the rabbis all voted to tell God, bring on the Messiah. Now, think about this, folks. I did not know that God was democratic. Yeah, these rabbis they still do, they think that they can vote, and then they tell God how they voted, and God will have to do what they say to him. They say that God works for them. They're the rabbis, and God doesn't have any will of his. God must do what they say. And so the rabbis got together, and the chief rabbi, they had a big ceremony, and they ordered God. They said, God, bring us the Jewish Messiah, the one we've been waiting for so long to see. Gog and Magog are here. We're right on the verge, and we want the Messiah to come. We order you to do it. We command you. Folks, that's pretty brash, isn't it? That's pretty bold. To give God a commandment. Now, the Word of Faith people do that. I know Kenneth Copeland and all those fakers, they tell God all the time, give me a Cadillac. I want a new wife. This one here, smarted it off to me. I don't know what they say. They probably say things like that. I want a new house. I want a new yacht. My wife wants a fur coat. We want to go to Rome, to Paris, to London. We want millions of dollars. Give it to us. We command it. That's my word of faith. I have faith, and you got to do it. They're telling God what to do. Now, the rabbis did that. And I'm thinking, folks, I don't know why I think these thoughts, but it might be that God gives them what they want. They want to command him. They told him. This was in the news. The rabbis commanded God, send us the Messiah. It's time. He might do it. He might do what they order him to do. But I wonder if they're going to be happy. when the Messiah comes. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 in the New Testament says, he will claim to be God and above all gods. And he will bring with him the lie, capital L, the lie. And only those who know the true God will know what's going on. He will bring the lie, and he will bring with him a strong delusion. A delusion. The Jews are going to be deluded. And when the Messiah comes, they'll say, there's our Messiah. How wonderful. Jesus, of course, was a fake. He was a blasphemer. He's gone. But now we have a real Messiah. The new King David is here. Oh, yes. He'll even have the Jews to rebuild that temple. Rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 says he'll go inside the temple and declare himself to be God. He'll say, I'm your Messiah. And Jesus told the Jews of his time, he said, me you do not accept. I come in the name of God. I come in the name of Emmanuel, God with us, but you reject me. But someday, said Jesus Christ, he told the Jews, someday one will come in his own name. Him you will accept. Friends, I don't know his name, but I know the number of his name. It's 666. That's the number of his name. I don't know the name, but I know about his mark, the mark of the beast. That's symbolically, it has the number 666. And now the rabbis are demanding that Jesus, well, not Jesus, but God, whoever their God is, whether it's Lucifer or the Shekinah or, the mother goddess or whoever, the Talmud and the Kabbalah tell them to pray to. But they're not even praying. They're demanding. They're giving a commandment. Bring the Messiah. Boy, they're going to get it. They're going to get the Messiah. They're not going to be happy with what he brings to them. He's going to bring death. You see, he's God of death. The Bible says in Proverbs, God said, all those who hate me love death. Oh, yes. All those who hate me love death. They're going to get death. Well, General George Patton, let's switch to another subject here. General George Patton, after World War II, was not happy. He was over in Germany. He was made governor of a big area as a general. And he saw right away that the Germans were victims. And the Russians and even the United States and Britain we were treating Germany terribly. Now, if you haven't read The Bad War by Mike King, that we offer here in the Ministry of War, you need to. The Bad War. People have talked about the World War II being the good war. Oh no, it was a bad war. It was a bad war. Did you know that over 2.5 million Germans died after they surrendered? How can that be? We put German soldiers in prison camps without any shelter at all, without hardly any food, and they all died. Over 1 million died. And then there were the men, women, and children that we murdered. Oh no, we wouldn't do things like that. That would not have happened. And if it did, why, I would know about that. Why, I read the newspapers and I keep up with stuff. You keep up with lies. I read those lies, and now I know the truth. We offer a great book in the ministry here called Hellstorm. Boy, what a book that is. Hellstorm. Now, George Patton was an interesting man. He knew what was really happening. One of the things he was ordered to do was to kick Germans out of their homes. I mean, listen, tens of thousands of homes were bombed, clear to the ground. I mean, were just destroyed, firebombed. But those homes that were still standing and erect and straight, he was told, take the Germans, kick them in the street, and put the Jews in their homes. I'm talking about men, women, and children, old men, old couples that had done nothing wrong. And the American troops were told, go to their house and tell them, you no longer own this home. We're giving it away to others, to Jews. He said that's wrong. You see, he wanted to do what we were told they were going to do, which was to bring peace to Germany. Germany laid down their guns. They stopped their tank motors. They had no more air force. They totally surrendered, unconditionally surrendered. But they didn't realize that unconditional meant unconditional, and then America and Russia and Britain would turn out to be such cruel and monstrous masters of their fate. Millions died. Millions died. We murdered them. Did you know that we kept the concentration camps going after World War II? People don't know that. You don't know. You read the book about Jonathan Sack, a Jewish man, called An Eye for an Eye. He says, we kept the concentration camps going, but instead of Jews and others going there, we brought in the Germans. And we murdered little children. We murdered little girls and boys, old people. We murdered them. We made the Jews to be commandants of the camps. Now, I know you're out there saying, you're wringing your hands saying, that's not true, Tex. That's not, but it is true. Oh, yes, it's true. Now, George Patton saw these things going on, and he didn't like it. He wanted to bring peace and prosperity back to Germany. He knew they would be our friends forever if we simply had defeated them. By the way, he made sure they were defeated. He was the greatest general in World War II. No doubt about it. But he saw the deliberate manner in which Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Dwight Eisenhower were treating the Germans. He said, we're selling out this country to these communists from Russia. And he heard about the Morgenthau Plan, too, and he was told to enforce the Morgenthau Plan. He wrote to the Secretary of War, Mr. Stimson, and he said, I'm opposed to what we're doing to the German people. Of course, the media are not admitting what we're doing, but you know what we're doing, Mr. Stimson. Basically, the American forces were murdering the innocent Germans. Now, I know you think, well, they couldn't be innocent. Sure they were. Let me ask you a question, my friend. During the war against Iraq, during the war against Saddam Hussein in Iraq, we killed up to 4 million Iraqis. Now, some people say, no, it was only about 500,000. Others say 1 million. Others say 2. Some people say as many as 4 million Iraqis died. Now, if that is true, and it is true, and even Madeleine Albright, I saw her myself last night. In fact, they had a special on television. She admitted, former Secretary of State, she admitted that we had killed over 500,000 children in Iraq with American bombing and so forth. And she should have been put on trial. This was a monstrous thing. How about you, dear friends? If all of the Germans were guilty for World War II, then all of the Americans are guilty for the Iraq War. You get my point? Are you guilty for the Iraq War? No. We went over there and killed people that had done nothing wrong. They didn't even do 9/11. That was Saudi Arabians. 15 of the 19 hijackers, so-called, were Saudi Arabians. But yet we claimed there were weapons of mass destruction. We lied about that. George Bush and, whatever, I don't even want to remember the name of his vice president, that crazy nut, Dick Cheney. Oh, boy. I get mad when I see that guy's ugly face. Murderer. But friends, you're an American. You're responsible for that war. Maybe you should be put in a concentration camp. Maybe you and your children should be killed. Maybe you should be monstrously brutalized. Now, I don't believe that. I don't think that. I think our leaders should go to prison. It is our leaders, George Bush and all the others that led us, all of those congressmen. That's why we're so angry now. We've been lied to for so long. Well, General Patton, he wrote his wife. The letters in the archives. He wrote his wife from Germany. He said, I intend to go back to America and inform the American people of what's really going on here in Germany. I'm going to tell them the truth. Boy, America could not allow that. Truman would not allow that. Eisenhower would not allow that. And I believe they murdered him. The Jews controlled Germany. They do today. That's why all these migrants are coming in. That's why all of them they're going to take in 2 million immigrants this very year. All of these Middle East people from Syria and Iraq and boy, Germany. Poor Germany. Poor Germany. General George Patton knew about this. He was going to come back and tell the American people what was really going on. Reminds me of the soldier Pat Tillman. Remember the NFL football star? A real hero. He volunteered to go to Afghanistan. He gave up $1 million in his contract. I think it was over $1 million. And he went over to be an enlisted man in the Special Forces, Pat Tillman. He was like the poster child for the U.S. military. But when he got to Afghanistan, he saw what was going on. He said, wait just a minute. He saw all those poppy fields, the heroin that we were helping to harvest and produce. He saw we were killing people with heroin. He saw that the war was unconstitutional. It was wrong. And he wrote his wife and his mother, and he said, I'm going to go back to America, and I'm going to inform the American people of what's really happening here. We could not allow that. And we killed Pat Tillman. We murdered him. He was murdered. And so was George Patton. We need to get to the bottom of this. It's been what, 45, over 60 years now. Over 60 years since George Patton was murdered. We need to get to the bottom of it. And in 1963, John F. Kennedy was killed. We need to get to the bottom of it. We need some truth telling, my friends. Wow. Now, Glenn Beck. What a liar this guy is. Did you know he said that he had a prophecy from God? And Glenn Beck said that God told him that Ted Cruz was going to be president of the United States. And Glenn Beck got so mad at Donald Trump during the campaign, he said, I'd like to take a butcher knife and stab Donald Trump. I want to stab and kill him. I want to stab him till he's dead. Now, does that sound like a Christian man to you? That's not right. That's not right. He's a sick man. Well, he was wrong too. That was a bad prophecy, wouldn't it? Because Cruz did not win the election. He lost. He's not going to be president. No. Now his father, Rafael Cruz, is in that picture. There is a picture. Go to my website, TexeMARRS.com or PowerProphecy.com, and look at the picture. And see the videos that I've got. You'll see that Rafael Cruz came over from Cuba. From Cuba. He was paid by the CIA. Now, when John F. Kennedy was killed, Rafael Cruz fled to Canada. And that's where that's why people say that Ted Cruz is a Canadian. Because he was born in Canada. An American mother, a Cuban father. He fled to Canada where he worked at the Bush Oil Company. You see, Bush had a proprietary oil company. It was the proprietorship of the CIA. George Bush was a CIA agent. He later on became the director of the CIA. Rafael Cruz and Lee Harvey Oswald worked directly for George Bush. That's how Ted Cruz. That's how he got to Harvard. That's why his wife Heidi is on the Council on Foreign Relations. That's it. Connections, my friend. Connections. Well, I guess we're out of time here. Boy, I just wish I had so much more time. Well, until next week, my friends. We'll be back on the air again next week, and we got some hot things next week. Be sure to tune in. Tune in and discover the power of prophecy.